I thought I had the perfect life, successful business, beautiful wife, and a miracle son after years of heartbreak. Then I found a hotel key card hidden in my wife's nightstand, and everything I believed about my family turned out to be a lie. What I discovered next would destroy me completely, but also reveal who I really was when everything was on the line. My name is Dylan Hope. I'm 47 years old, and I've been managing food production contracts for 2 decades. Built my business from scratch, supplying restaurants across 3 states. I thought I had everything figured out: successful career, beautiful wife, and what I believe was my miracle son after years of heartbreak. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday in October. I was making coffee in our kitchen, the one Rachel and I renovated 3 years ago when Tommy turned 1. She'd insisted on granite countertops that cost more than my first car. Rachel walked in wearing that silk robe I bought her for Christmas, her auburn hair still messy from sleep. She looked beautiful, but something felt different. There was this energy around her, like she was humming with electricity. "Morning, honey," Rachel said, reaching for her mug. Her voice had this sing-song quality that immediately put me on edge. "Morning," I replied, watching her movements. Everything seemed too choreographed, too perfect. She started making her tea, the same chamomile blend she'd been drinking for months. But today she was different, lighter somehow, like she was carrying a secret that made her feel powerful. "Tommy's still sleeping?" she asked, stirring her tea with deliberate slowness. "Yeah, he had a rough night. Kept asking for you around bedtime." Rachel's hand paused for just a fraction of a second. "Well, you know how these industry networking events run late. I told you I'd be home around midnight." I nodded, but something cold settled in my stomach. She'd come home at 12:30, and I'd been awake. Heard her fumbling with the keys. Heard her shower running for 20 minutes. "How was the event?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Oh, you know how it is. Same conversations about supply chain optimization." Rachel laughed, but sounded forced. "Though Vincent was there. Your dad's old friend from the construction days. He asked about you." Vincent Crawford, Dad's longtime buddy who'd been like an uncle to me growing up. The man who'd taught me to drive, who'd been best man at my parents' wedding. Vincent was at a food service networking event. I asked. That didn't make sense. Vince ran a construction company. Rachel's spoon clinked against her mug too loudly. "Well, he was there with someone from his company. They're looking into cafeteria services for their job sites." The lie sat between us like smoke. Vince had his own guy for that stuff. Had used the same catering service for 15 years. I knew because I tried to bid for his business 3 times. "That's great," I said finally. "Maybe I should give him a call." "Oh, I wouldn't bother," Rachel said quickly. He seemed pretty settled with his current arrangement. Another lie. And this one she delivered with a smile that never reached her eyes. I finished my coffee in silence, listening to Tommy's little feet hitting the floor upstairs. But something had shifted. Some fundamental truth had changed, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face what it meant. The rest of that Tuesday crawled by like molasses. I couldn't focus on anything at work, kept checking my phone every few minutes, waiting for something I couldn't name. My assistant Jennifer noticed I was off, asked if I was feeling all right. I told her I was fine, but we both knew it was a lie. Around 3 in the afternoon, I decided to swing by Tommy's daycare early. Needed to see his face. Needed something real and honest in my day. The kid always had this way of grounding me, reminding me what actually mattered. "Daddy." Tommy ran toward me with his arms wide, nearly knocking over another kid in his excitement. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, smiled and walked over with his backpack. "He had a good day today," she said, though he did ask about his mommy a lot. Said she's been working late, and he misses her bedtime stories. My chest tightened. Tommy was 3, but he wasn't stupid. Kids notice when their routines change, when the people they love start disappearing. "Yeah, she's been busy with work lately," I said, lifting Tommy into my arms. On the drive home, Tommy chattered about his day, about the finger painting they'd done, about how his friend Jake brought cookies to share. Normal kid stuff that should have made me smile. Instead, all I could think about was Rachel's lie about Vincent being at that networking event. When we got home, I settled Tommy in front of his favorite cartoon and went to our bedroom. I wasn't planning to snoop, wasn't planning to become that guy who goes through his wife's things. But something pulled me toward her nightstand. The top drawer held the usual stuff: hand cream, reading glasses, a few magazines. But underneath an old issue of Good Housekeeping, my fingers found something that made my blood run cold. A hotel key card. The Marriott downtown, room 412. From last Tuesday night. I stared at that piece of plastic like it was a snake ready to strike. Rachel had told me she was at a client dinner last Tuesday, said she'd eaten too much pasta and felt sick. That's why she'd come home late and gone straight to bed. My hands were shaking as I put the key card back exactly where I found it. This wasn't about business dinners or networking events. This was about hotel rooms and lies and the slow destruction of everything I'd built my life around. That evening, Rachel came home around 7, carrying takeout from that Italian place on 5th Street. She kissed my cheek and ruffled Tommy's hair, acting like the perfect wife and mother. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, unpacking containers of pasta and salad. "Fine," I said, watching her movements. "How about yours? Any interesting meetings?" "Oh, you know how it is. Lots of paperwork, a few phone calls. Nothing too exciting." She opened a bottle of wine, poured herself a generous glass. "I'm exhausted." I wanted to ask her about the hotel key card. Wanted to demand an explanation, to give her a chance to tell me the truth. But something held me back. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the last desperate hope that I was wrong about everything. Instead, I played with Tommy while Rachel scrolled through her phone at the dinner table. Watched her smile at messages I couldn't see. Watch her type responses with the kind of care you reserve for someone special. Later that night, after Tommy was asleep, I lay in bed next to my wife and felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. She was right there, close enough to touch, but she might as well have been on another planet. And for the first time in our 10 years of marriage, I wondered if the woman lying next to me had ever really loved me at all. I didn't sleep that night. By Thursday morning, I made my decision. Time to confront Rachel and give her one chance to tell me the truth. She was in the bathroom getting ready for work when I walked in. Her reflection in the mirror looked startled when she saw me. "Dylan, you scared me," Rachel said, applying lipstick. "You look terrible. Didn't you sleep?" "We need to talk," I said, crossing my arms. Something shifted in her expression. The mask she'd been wearing seemed to slip. "About what?" "About Vincent. About hotel rooms. About where you've really been spending your evenings." I pulled the hotel key card from my pocket and held it up. The Marriott downtown, room 412. Last Tuesday night. Rachel stared at the key card like it was evidence of murder. Which it was. Evidence of our marriage's murder. "Dylan, listen." "No," I said, my voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "You listen. I've been patient, made excuses for your behavior. But I'm done pretending." Rachel's composure finally split. Her face flushed red, and venom crept into her voice. "Don't be mad," she said, like she was talking to a child having a tantrum. The condescension hit me like a physical blow. After everything, she was treating me like I was being unreasonable. "Don't be mad," I repeated, feeling something cold settle in my chest. "Don't be surprised when I'm not here." I walked out, leaving her standing there with her mouth open. I'd given her a chance to explain, to show remorse. Instead, she'd treated me like an inconvenience. Downstairs, Tommy was eating cereal, humming to himself. He looked up when I entered. "Morning, Daddy. You look different today." "Different how, buddy?" "Stronger," he said, then went back to his cereal. Out of the mouths of babes. My 3-year-old could see what I'd been blind to for months. I wasn't the same man who'd been making excuses. That version of Dylan Hope was gone. 20 minutes later, Rachel came downstairs, her composure restored. She kissed Tommy's head and grabbed her purse like nothing had happened. "We'll talk tonight," she said, but it sounded more like a threat. "Yes," I replied. "We will." After she left, I called my brother Chase. The old Dylan would have suffered in silence. But that man was dead, and the one who'd taken his place was ready for war. That evening, Rachel came home with Chinese takeout and a fake smile. She'd had all day to prepare her defense. "Tommy's upstairs playing," I said as she unpacked containers. "Good. That gives us time to clear up this morning's misunderstanding." She poured wine, hands perfectly steady. "Dylan, I know how that hotel key must have looked." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Before you say another word, you should know I've spent the day making phone calls." Her smile faltered. "What kind of phone calls?" I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. The screen showed a detailed report from a private investigator. Photos, timestamps, credit card records, everything in black and white. Rachel went pale, scrolling through the evidence. Pictures of her entering the Marriott with Vincent. Images at restaurants, holding hands, kissing. Bank statements showing charges I didn't recognize. You hired someone to follow me, she whispered. I hired someone to find the truth. Something you're incapable of telling. She closed the laptop and looked at me with pure fury that I dared expose her lies. So what now, Dylan? You gonna play the wounded husband? I'm not playing anything. I am the victim of your lies and betrayal. Rachel laughed harshly. Our family. You mean where you work 60 hours a week and expect me to raise your son alone? My son. The words hit like ice water. What do you mean, my son? Pure panic flickered across her face before the mask returned. I meant our son. Obviously. Too late. I'd seen the truth in that unguarded moment. Tommy's birth timing, her secrecy during pregnancy, the fact he looked nothing like me. How long, Rachel? How long with Vincent? She stood, smoothing her skirt for battle. Longer than you think. It's been the only thing keeping me sane in this prison you call a marriage. The cruelty was breathtaking. This wasn't the woman I'd married. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Now. Her composure shattered. You can't throw me out. Not anymore. You chose Vincent over our family. She grabbed her purse, then turned back with venom. You'll regret this, Dylan. I'll make sure you lose everything. After she left, I checked on sleeping Tommy, clutching his stuffed bear. Looking at his peaceful face, I made a promise. Whatever happened, I'd protect him. Even if he wasn't biologically mine, he was my son in every way that mattered. But first, I had calls to make. Starting with a lawyer, ending with a DNA test. The DNA results arrived 3 days later. I sat in my truck outside the lab, hands shaking as I opened the envelope. The words blurred together at first, but the conclusion was crystal clear. Tommy wasn't my biological son. I'd expected it, but seeing it in black and white still felt like a punch to the gut. 3 years of midnight feedings, first words, scraped knees, and bedtime stories. 3 years of being his daddy, and now science was telling me he belonged to Vincent Crawford. But as I sat there staring at the numbers, something shifted inside me. Biology didn't make a father. Vincent might have contributed DNA, but I'd contributed everything else. I was the one who taught Tommy to tie his shoes, who kissed his forehead when he had nightmares, who would die before letting anyone hurt him. That evening, I picked up Tommy from daycare like nothing had changed. Because for him, nothing had. He was still the same little boy who ran to me with open arms, who called me Daddy, who trusted me to keep him safe. Daddy, you look sad again, Tommy said as I buckled him into his car seat. I'm not sad, buddy. Just thinking. About Mommy. The innocence in his voice nearly broke me. Yeah, about Mommy. Is she coming home soon? I looked into his trusting brown eyes, Vincent's eyes, I realized now, and made a decision that would define the rest of our lives. We'll see, Tommy. But no matter what happens, I'll always be your daddy. You understand that? He nodded seriously. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, son. That night, after putting Tommy to bed, I called my lawyer. Sarah Hendricks had been recommended by Chase, and she had a reputation for being ruthless in custody cases. Mr. Hope, I've reviewed the materials you sent over, Sarah said. This is going to be complicated. The DNA results complicate things, but they don't eliminate your parental rights entirely. What do you mean? You've been the child's father for 3 years. You're on the birth certificate. In many states, that carries significant weight, regardless of biology. We can fight for custody based on the best interests of the child. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time in weeks. What are our chances? Good. If we can prove that removing the child from your care would be detrimental to his well-being, and given that his mother was conducting an affair with his biological father while married to you, we have strong grounds to argue instability on their part. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd confronted Rachel just days ago, and felt something I hadn't felt since this nightmare began. Not quite hope, but determination. They might have destroyed my marriage, but they weren't going to destroy my relationship with my son. I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. Every soccer practice I'd attended, every doctor's appointment, every parent-teacher conference. 3 years of being Tommy's father in every way except biology. Vincent and Rachel might have thought they could waltz back into our lives and claim what was theirs. But they were about to learn that being a parent was about more than DNA. It was about love, commitment, and showing up every single day. And in that contest, I'd already won. 2 weeks later, I sat in Sarah's office with a stack of documents 3 inches thick. Bank statements, photographs, school records, medical files, everything that proved I'd been Tommy's real father for 3 years. "This is impressive, Dylan," Sarah said, flipping through the evidence. "You've documented everything perfectly. But I need to prepare you for what's coming." "What do you mean?" "Rachel's hired counsel too. Kenneth Davis from Davis and Associates. He's known for playing dirty in custody cases, and he'll use the DNA results to argue that Vincent is the natural father with superior rights." The name hit me like ice water. Kenneth Davis was the lawyer who'd helped my ex-business partner steal half my client list 5 years ago. The man was a shark who'd sell his own mother for billable hours. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "Rachel's claiming you were abusive, emotionally manipulative. She's painting herself as a victim who was afraid to leave. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. That's complete garbage. Ask anyone who knows us. That's exactly what we're going to do. But Dylan, you need to understand that custody battles can get ugly fast. They're going to attack your character, your fitness as a parent, anything they can use to make you look bad. Let them try. I've got 3 years of being the best father I know how to be." Sarah smiled grimly. "That's the attitude we need. But there's one more thing we should discuss. Vincent Crawford has resources. Construction business, property, money. He can provide financial advantages you might not be able to match. You think that matters to Tommy? You think he cares about Vincent's bank account when he's scared in the middle of the night?" "No, but judges sometimes do. We need to be prepared for that argument too." I left Sarah's office with a clearer picture of the war ahead. This wasn't just about custody anymore. It was about survival. Rachel and Vincent had resources, but I had something they didn't. 3 years of actually being Tommy's father. That evening, I was helping Tommy with a puzzle when he looked up at me with those serious brown eyes. "Daddy, are you going to go away like Mommy did?" The question hit me harder than any legal threat. "No, buddy, I'm not going anywhere. Promise." I knelt down to his level and took his small hands in mine. "I promise, Tommy. No matter what happens, I'll always be your daddy." He threw his arms around my neck, and I held him tight, breathing in that little boy's smell of shampoo and graham crackers. Rachel and Vincent might have Vincent's DNA, but this moment, this trust, this pure love belonged to me. And I'd fight hell itself before I let anyone take it away. The custody hearing was scheduled for next month. Until then, every day with Tommy felt precious, like something that might disappear at any moment. But I refused to let fear control our lives. Instead, I focused on being present, really present, reading extra bedtime stories, taking him to the park, teaching him to throw a baseball, building memories that no court document could erase. Because whatever happened in that courtroom, Tommy would always know that someone had loved him enough to fight for him. And sometimes, that's all a father can give his son. 3 weeks into the legal battle, the scandal hit my business like a freight train. Word travels fast in the food service industry, especially when it involves adultery and paternity disputes. My biggest client, Henderson Hotels, called an emergency meeting. "Dylan, we've heard some concerning rumors," said Robert Henderson, the chain CEO, as we sat in his sterile conference room. "Something about personal issues affecting your business operations." I kept my voice steady, professional. "My personal life has never interfered with my work, Mr. Henderson. You know my track record. That was before you were splashed across social media as part of a custody scandal. Our brand can't be associated with this kind of drama." My blood ran cold. "Social media?" Henderson slid his tablet across the table. Rachel's Facebook page filled the screen with a post that made my stomach drop. "Praying for strength as I fight for my son against a man who's trying to keep a child from his real father. Sometimes love means making hard choices. #strongmother, #fighting for family." The post had dozens of sympathetic comments and hundreds of shares. She'd painted herself as the victim and me as the villain, all while conveniently leaving out the adultery and lies. "Mr. Henderson, this is completely one-sided. She's manipulating the narrative. Dylan, I'm sorry. We're going to have to suspend our contract pending resolution of this matter. We can't risk the negative publicity." I lost 3 more clients that week. 15 years of building my reputation, gone because my cheating wife decided to wage a social media war. But I wasn't going down without a fight. That evening, I called my old Army buddy David Thompson, who now ran a crisis management firm. We'd served together in Afghanistan, and I trusted him with my life. Dylan, brother, I heard about the situation. This is a hit job, plain and simple. But we can fight back. How? Carefully and strategically. We document everything, build a counter-narrative based on facts, not emotion. But first, you need to disappear from social media completely. Don't respond to anything she posts. Don't defend yourself publicly. Let your lawyer handle the legal stuff while we handle the public perception. David was right, but staying silent while she destroyed my reputation was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to tell my side of the story, to expose her lies for what they were. Instead, I focused on what mattered, being the best father I could be to Tommy during the time I'd left with him. Because deep down, I was terrified the court would side with Vincent's biological claim and Rachel's victim narrative. Tommy sensed something was wrong during dinner that night. "Daddy, why do people keep staring at us at the grocery store?" The innocence in his question broke my heart. At 3 years old, he was already feeling the effects of his mother's public campaign against me. Some people had to gossip, buddy, but it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is that I love you. Are you going to have to go away? I knelt down to his level, looking into those brown eyes that weren't mine, but somehow still were. "Tommy, listen to me carefully. No matter what happens, no matter where either of us ends up, I will always be your daddy. Distance can't change that. Courts can't change that. Nothing can change that." He threw his small arms around my neck, and I held him tight, breathing in his little boy scent, memorizing the feeling of his heartbeat against my chest. Later that night, after Tommy was asleep, I sat in my home office surrounded by legal documents and financial statements. My business was crumbling, my reputation was in tatters, and I might lose the most important person in my life. But I wasn't broken. Bent, maybe. Bloodied, definitely. But not broken. I opened my laptop and started typing. Not a social media response, not a public defense, but a detailed timeline of every moment I'd been Tommy's father. Every doctor's appointment, every scraped knee I'd kissed better, every night I'd stayed up with him when he was sick. If they wanted to fight dirty, I'd fight back with the truth. And the truth was simple. I might not be Tommy's biological father, but I was his dad in every way that mattered. The courtroom felt like a battlefield. Rachel sat at the plaintiff's table with Kenneth Davis, looking like the perfect grieving mother in a conservative blue dress. Vincent sat behind her, gray-haired and respectable in his best suit, playing the role of concerned biological father. I sat with Sarah, wearing my only decent suit and trying to project confidence I didn't feel. Behind me, Chase had taken time off work to show support, along with 3 of Tommy's daycare teachers who'd volunteered to testify about my involvement in his life. Judge Patricia Hawkins was a stern woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. She'd been on the family court bench for 20 years, and Sarah had warned me she didn't tolerate nonsense from either side. "This is a complex case involving paternity, custody, and allegations of misconduct," Judge Hawkins began. "I want to hear from both sides, but I'm warning everyone now. My only concern is the best interest of the child. Personal grievances and marital disputes are secondary to that child's welfare." Kenneth Davis stood first, painting Rachel as a devoted mother trapped in a loveless marriage. He portrayed Vincent as the wronged biological father who wanted to do right by his son. And he painted me as a controlling husband who discovered the affair and was now trying to punish Rachel by keeping her from her child. "Your Honor, the DNA evidence is clear. Vincent Crawford is the biological father of this child. While Mr. Hope may have formed an emotional attachment to the boy, that doesn't supersede the natural father's rights or the mother's custody claims." Sarah stood for our defense, and I'd never been more grateful for her fierce reputation. "Your Honor, biology doesn't make a father. Mr. Hope has been this child's dad for 3 years. He's the man who gets up at midnight when Tommy has nightmares. He's the one who knows Tommy's favorite bedtime story, his food allergies, his best friends at daycare. DNA is just science, but fatherhood is love, commitment, and presence." The next 2 hours were brutal. Rachel testified with tears in her eyes about her unhappy marriage and her fear of my controlling behavior. Vincent spoke about his desire to be a real father, to his biological son. Both of them painted me as an obstacle to their happy family reunion. Then it was my turn. "Mr. Hope," Sarah said gently, "tell the court about your relationship with Tommy." I looked at the judge, then at the gallery where Tommy's teachers sat, and found my voice. "Your Honor, I've been Tommy's father since the day he was born. I was in the delivery room when he took his first breath. I changed his first diaper, gave him his first bottle, walked the floor with him when he had colic. I taught him to say daddy, and please, and thank you. I've never missed a doctor's appointment or a parent-teacher conference. When he falls down, he calls for me. When he's scared, he crawls into my bed. When he laughs, it's the most beautiful sound in the world." My voice broke slightly, but I pushed through. "I know the DNA says Vincent Crawford contributed genetic material, but I've contributed everything else. My time, my love, my whole heart. Tommy is my son in every way that matters, and I'll fight for him until my last breath." The teacher testimonies were devastating to Rachel's case. Mrs. Patterson from Tommy's daycare painted a picture of my constant involvement while noting Rachel's frequent absences. Tommy's pediatrician testified about my presence at every appointment, while Rachel often rescheduled. When Judge Hawkins called a recess, Sarah squeezed my shoulder. "That was perfect, Dylan. You showed them what a real father looks like." But as I watched Rachel whisper urgently with her lawyer, I knew this was far from over. The legal system favored biological parents and mothers, and I was neither. I was just a man who loved a little boy more than life itself. The battle wasn't won yet, but at least now the court knew who Tommy's real father was. Judge Hawkins returned to the courtroom after a 2-hour deliberation that felt like 2 years. Tommy's future hung in the balance, and I could barely breathe as she shuffled through her notes. "This has been one of the most difficult custody cases I've presided over," she began. "The court has considered all testimony, evidence, and expert opinions. While DNA establishes biological paternity, the law recognizes that the best interests of the child supersede biological claims when those interests conflict." My heart hammered against my ribs. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. "The evidence shows that Mr. Hope has been the primary caretaker and father figure for 3 years. Tommy's teachers, pediatrician, and daycare providers all testify to Mr. Hope's consistent involvement and the child's strong attachment to him. Conversely, the evidence suggests that removing Tommy from Mr. Hope's care would cause significant psychological harm." Judge Hawkins looked directly at me. "However, the court also recognizes that Mrs. Hope has parental rights as the biological mother, despite her poor choices during the marriage." The room felt like it was spinning. Was I winning or losing? Therefore, the court awards primary custody to Mr. Dylan Hope, with supervised visitation rights to Mrs. Rachel Hope every other weekend. Mr. Vincent Crawford's petition for paternal rights is denied, as his claim was not made in good faith, and his character witnesses raised concerns about his fitness as a parent. The gavel came down like thunder. I'd won. Tommy was staying with me. Sarah hugged me as tears streamed down my face. Behind us, Chase was whooping loud enough to earn a disapproving look from the bailiff. Across the aisle, Rachel sat in stunned silence while Kenneth Davis whispered urgently in her ear. Outside the courthouse, Chase wrapped me in a bear hug. "Dad will be proud of you, little brother. You fought like hell for that boy." That evening, I picked up Tommy from daycare like I had 1,000 times before, but everything felt different. Lighter. Permanent. "Daddy," Mrs. Patterson said, "you had an important meeting today." "I did, buddy. A very important meeting about you and me. Are we still going to live together?" I knelt down and looked into those brown eyes that would never be mine biologically, but belonged to me in every other way that mattered. "Forever and always, Tommy. You're stuck with me." He giggled and threw his arms around my neck. "Good. I like being stuck with you." As we drove home, I realized something profound had happened. This battle hadn't just been about custody. It had been about defining what family really meant. 10 months later, Tommy and I had settled into a new rhythm that felt more natural than anything from my previous life. The house was ours now. Rachel had signed over her interest as part of the divorce settlement, unable to afford the legal fees for a prolonged property battle. My business had slowly recovered from the social media disaster. Word spread about the court's decision, and several clients quietly returned, embarrassed about how quickly they'd abandoned me based on one-sided accusations. Tommy was thriving. He'd started asking fewer questions about Rachel, who'd moved to Atlanta with a new boyfriend and rarely exercised her visitation rights. Her phone calls became sporadic, then stopped altogether. "Daddy, look what I drew," Tommy said, running up to me with a crayon masterpiece. It showed two stick figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of a house with a dog. "That's beautiful, buddy. Who are these people?" "That's you and me and our new puppy. I've been thinking about getting a dog." The house felt too quiet sometimes, and Tommy had been asking about pets since he turned 4 last month. My phone buzzed with a text from Chase. "Tommy's birthday party still on for Saturday?" Sarah's excited to meet her honorary nephew. Chase had started dating my former lawyer 6 months ago, which initially felt weird but now seemed perfect. They understood each other's dedication to work and shared a dry sense of humor that kept everyone laughing at family dinners. That evening, as I tucked Tommy into bed, he looked up at me with those serious brown eyes. "Daddy, are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. "What made you think about that?" "You smile more now. Real smiles, not pretend ones." Once again, my son's perception amazed me. He was right. The smiles were real now. Not forced, not performed, but genuine expressions of contentment I'd forgotten were possible. "Yes, buddy. I'm happy. Are you happy?" "Very happy. I like it being just us." "Me too, Tommy. Me too." As I turned off his light and headed downstairs, I realized that the man who discovered his wife's betrayal almost a year ago was gone. In his place was someone stronger, more confident, more aware of what actually mattered. I'd lost a cheating wife and a false friend, but I'd gained something infinitely more valuable. The knowledge that I could survive anything life threw at me, and the absolute certainty that Tommy and I were exactly where we belonged.